Hi, my name is Joanna. This is my action research presentation. For my statement of core values, two values that I found to guide my research were equity and respect. Starting Teachers College, I didn't really know the difference between equity and equality, and now equity is something that guides me in my learning and how I view teaching in general. And respect, I feel, should be at the center of how we interact with students and their families. Statement of the research problem. I wanted to focus my research on a growth mindset, and I linked it to assessment because assessment practices really do influence how students continue on with their education and with their learning later on. Too often, students are discouraged by their marks and they begin to develop a fixed mindset. Classic assessment practices pit students against each other, comparing test scores and marks. And when a student does not hit a certain threshold, it creates a sense of failure. This is an issue that affects students later into their educational career as well. From personal experience, I was in a grade 4 or 5 class, and a lot of the time students wouldn't even approach a challenge. They just knew right away that, oh, I can't do it, I can't handle it, I give up. And that to me was amazing at such a young age already. Students don't have that resilience or that drive to do better and to try. And so I thought I would research some ways where growth mindset can help in that assessment. How will growth-focused assessment practices, monitoring individual progress over time, have a positive effect on student implicit theory and in turn encourage students to become more resilient and determined to succeed? Now for definitions of central and relevant terms. So these concepts are very wide and varied, but for the purposes of this presentation, these definitions are very general, just to give an idea of what these concepts are. So growth mindset is the idea that we have possibilities for bettering ourselves. Intelligence can be developed and nurtured. Growth assessment is assessing changes to scores over time, either two time points or multiple ones with different factors being accounted for using different models. Craft knowledge is bringing what we've learned over time into our practice, kind of like an occupational savvy. Resilience is whether students respond positively to challenges, and implicit theories are our assumptions we've made about the malleability of our personal qualities like intelligence and personality. My literature summary contains 5 articles, and to kick us off is Creating a Context for Growth-Focused Assessment by Barnes and Fives, written in 2016, so pretty recently. This was a great article just to gain some strategies on how to implement growth mindset in the classroom and how to instill it in your students. One part that really stood out to me was supporting growth mindset, and it gave a few ways to do that by promoting and modeling risk and mistake tolerance, offering timely and process-focused feedback, emphasizing effort over product, and establishing and holding high expectations of your students. So the teacher that this article was focused around was really great in modeling risk-taking, and she would even offer to change her students' grades if they could prove to her that they were correct or how that their answer was relevant. And she also talked a lot about her actual feedback and how she did it. She would call them love notes, and they were timely, formative, and process-oriented feedback. She would never use a red pen to mark up student work. Instead, she would write feedback on sticky notes and place it on their work so that they could go back and change it. And she always focused her feedback into strategy oriented words instead of just comforting students like, nice try, you'll do better next time. So my second article is called Towards a Growth Mindset and Assessment, written by Masters in 2014. And it goes over 3 different experiences that students go through in assessment in elementary school. So the first is providing success experiences. So this is when students get tasks that are at level or below level, assuming that they would be successful. This is thought to be a more pleasurable learning experience, and it is supposed to increase engagement, but it is not challenging. So when students fail at this type of assessment, it leads to the opposite of the intended outcome. Students begin to develop a negative association with their abilities and their intelligence. And the second is judging against standards. This is when we set clear expectations and they're consistent across society. These are not beneficial because students don't see the relationship between effort and outcome. These are like our standard tests done for all students. So the second, which is beneficial, is setting personal goals and monitoring progress over time. Every student has room for improvement, and we're not looking at age groups or achievement levels that they should be at for their grade level. It's the student individually assessing themselves and seeing where they could go and finding strategies to get there. So this next article is called Approaches to Academic Growth Assessment, written by Anderman, Gambert, O'Connell, and Regal in 2015. It was published in British Journal of Education Psychology, and it goes over some of the advantages of assessing growth and progress on a school-wide or even school board-wide scale. So some of these advantages of assessing growth are that growth models are more equitable than other measurement models because schools vary greatly in terms of student initial levels of achievement. Growth is less likely associated with socioeconomic status than is overall achievement. And growth models allow schools to be recognized for improvement in student learning, acknowledging that the overall measured academic performance of the students in each school is distinct from growth in performance. The article also goes over some different models for evaluating student growth. The different models used to measure student growth based on criterion. Some models are more reliable than others, taking into account things like teacher bias, school climate, socioeconomic status. Some of these models are value-added models, student gain score model, covariate adjustment model, student percentile gain models, univariate value-added response model, multivariate value-added model. So all these different names for models just goes to show that this data can be interpreted in so many different ways. So this next article is called Growth Approaches to Academic Development, Research into Academic Trajectories and Growth Assessment Goals and Mindsets, written by Martin H.J. in 2015. So this article goes through some theories involved in growth mindset on the basis of Carol Dweck, the go-to for growth mindset, and her quote here is, "The hallmark of human nature is each person's great capacity to adapt, to change, and to grow." Some of the theories involved in this article were achievement goal theory, underpinned by performance goals aimed to outperform others and demonstrate comparative competence, and mastery goals aiming to understand, develop skill, and improve. Goal setting theory, which is predominant in a few of the articles I've read and in education in general, is growth goals positively impact educational outcomes and make it clear to students, direct attention to effort, energize students, and there's a distance between current and desired attainment. And next is self-determination theory, 3 basic psychological needs, the satisfaction of which has implications for individuals' motivation and achievement. So these goals are autonomy, relatedness, and competence. Once these are met, motivation rises. This next article is about resilience. It's called Mindsets That Promote Resilience, when students believe that personal characteristics can be developed. And it's actually co-written by Carol Dweck with Wagner in 2012. So resilience is a little different from growth mindset and the articles that I've talked about previously, but it is very relevant to the topic, so I thought I would include it. So resilience is whether students respond positively to challenges, and it can be defined as good outcomes in spite of serious threats to adaptation or development. Academic underachievement and peer exclusion and victimization are huge issues right now, which can lead to a fixed mindset, which is thinking that challenges are a sign of lack of intelligence, which is the opposite of what we want. That's the opposite of growth mindset. So some ways to promote resilience is to teach students about how the brain grows and how growth mindset actually works. And we have to watch the way we speak to struggling students and students who are dealing with challenges, helping them develop strategies instead of just coping with their challenges. Now for the 3 data sources that I will be implementing in my plan, they are student work, teacher journal plan, they are student work, teacher journals, and student self-assessments. So the student work will be displayed actually on a rating scale, showing the progression, hopefully, of student marks as the semester, as the year goes on. This will be a quantitative value. Teacher journals will include observations of students as well as reflections of my own practice, a qualitative data source. Lastly, student self-assessment, how the students feel they are doing and implications in their implicit theory. Now for triangulation, validity, and reliability. So for triangulation, the 3 sources of data will be qualitative and quantitative to check for a correlation between growth-focused assessment and growth mindset. These will be the student self-assessment and student work rating scale. For validity, I'll be doing several observations, many throughout this whole school year, during different times during the day, during different subjects, recording the times and dates of these observations. I'm trying to remain objective and avoid making judgments in these observation notes, writing down what I see, what I hear, and keeping it relevant to the topic of implicit theory. For reliability, making sure that students are being honest, knowing that being honest is more important than saying something they think their teacher would want to hear, making sure that their student self-assessments are genuine and relate to what they're actually feeling. So the participants of the study will be the students. The setting is the classroom. There will be some crossover with students' home lives and how their parents react to this assessment strategy, but overall the setting will be the classroom, and that's where all the data collection will be taking place. So the types of data and when and how they will be collected. Student self-assessments will be done every 2 weeks, September to June, and that will correlate with student work rating scale, which also will be done every 2 weeks, September to June, to see if there is a correlation between how the students are feeling that they're doing and whether their marks agree. Teacher journal will be done weekly, September to June. Ethical considerations, growth-focused assessment practices would be a part of my classroom regardless, but the issue of privacy would come into play when student self-assessments are published in research papers or shared publicly otherwise. I would require students to consent to having their data shared, as well as consent from their parents. And I would make sure students knew that names would not be revealed, and also there would be an option to opt out of the research if they ever so wanted to. And keeping confidentiality in check, knowing that students might share information that they would not otherwise. So keeping that at the forefront to make sure that students feel secure in sharing their feelings and thoughts. And that's all for my presentation. Thank you for listening, and I hope you've enjoyed learning about growth mindset.